You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, in the last couple of days, in the aftermath of the shooting of Charlie Kirk, all eyes were on the FBI. Kash Patel had made himself a very public figure in light of all of this and had immediately started releasing information, including information about the suspect that ultimately proved to be untrue. So first and foremost, has he damaged the investigation in any way by coming out and releasing information that was unsubstantiated and ultimately false?
You know, he's damaged the investigation and the ultimate trial in a very concrete way, and I'll talk about how that is in a minute. But what he is proving time and again, Brian, is that he is dangerously unfit to lead the FBI. And there are two legal stories that broke over the course of the last couple of days that dovetail pretty well to prove, really beyond all doubt, that he has no business being the director of the FBI. So early on, he actually tweeted or posted on social media, we've got the guy in custody. We've got the suspect. We've got the shooter. He didn't say mission accomplished, but he might as well have. And it turns out he was dead wrong. And now, of course, he wants us to believe, we really have the guy, the second guy. He's the real shooter. So don't believe what I said the first time. Let me share with our viewers something called the third-party perpetrator defense, because, Brian, I can promise you, in the event the second guy is the right guy, there's enough evidence to indict him and take him to trial, the third-party perpetrator defense will make a prominent showing at the shooter's trial. How? The defense attorney for the person who allegedly killed Charlie Kirk will call as a witness the director, hopefully by then he'll be the former director of the FBI, Kash Patel. And he will examine Kash Patel along the following lines. Now, Mr. Former Director of the FBI, you posted on social media for the entire world to see that you had the shooter in custody, didn't you? And you were wrong. You now want us to believe that that wasn't the shooter, that my client is the shooter, somebody that you later took into custody. Now, let me ask you, former Director Patel, there is no way you would have posted that on social media for the entire world to see if you didn't have strong, rock-solid, indeed definitive evidence that the first person you told us was the shooter that you took into custody was, in fact, the shooter. Because to post something like that without hard evidence showing that he was the shooter would be reckless. It would be dangerous. It would be incompetent, and it would be irresponsible. So what is it, former Director Patel? Were you irresponsible and reckless, or were you right? And it was that first guy you took into custody. It was not my client. Now, Brian, I have seen that kind of a defense play out hundreds of times in court. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. But all it has to accomplish is create reasonable doubt in the minds of one of the 12 jurors, and now you've got yourself a mistrial. So he is dangerously unfit to lead the FBI. But let me talk about a second story and how it dovetails to prove definitively Kash Patel's unfitness. It's just a couple of days ago that Kash Patel was sued by three, frankly, of our nation's top, most respected, most accomplished FBI special agents and supervisory special agents. And when you read that lawsuit, Kash Patel is quoted as saying, I know that it's unlawful to fire you, but based on the political pressure I'm getting, if I want to keep my job, I have to wrongfully fire you. Brian, I have had the honor and the privilege to lead men and women in both the Army and at the Department of Justice at the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. And what I can tell you is that when you're put in a position of responsibility to lead and supervise others, the three most important rules of leadership or supervision are support your people, and support your people. Kash Patel is the opposite of a supervisor or of a leader. And the man has no business heading up the FBI. He has now proven that to us a couple of times over.
Glenn, how unorthodox is it that you would have a director of the FBI or any prosecutor, frankly, who would come out and just kind of vomit out unsubstantiated information during an ongoing investigation?
I believe it's entirely unprecedented. You know, at the very beginning of a high-profile investigation involving deadly violence of a public figure, for an FBI director to jump out before he obviously had any of the facts or the information about the first person that they took into custody and question. I don't believe that's ever been done. That's not just my opinion. I was going through a good bit of the reporting, and there are some retired career FBI agents who have said it has never been done. It's unwise. It is indeed reckless. And you know, it's interesting because based on some of the reporting, specifically from Reuters, it looks like the White House has taken notice. Let me just read our viewers one sentence of the new Reuters reporting about how the White House views this extraordinary bungle by Kash Patel. It reads that a White House source granted anonymity said that, quote, Kash Patel's performance is really not acceptable to the White House or the American people and will be addressed. I mean, I take Reuters at its word that that is an unnamed White House source, and it looks like we may very soon be referring to Kash Patel as the former director of the FBI.
Well, I'm curious about that because my next question was going to be, is there no recourse when somebody like Kash Patel does what he did, and the reason that I'm skeptical that we will see any recourse is that this administration has viewed any kind of fuck up by anybody in the White House and the subsequent attacks on those people as an opportunity to just hunker down and protect their own people against, you know, the evil communist Marxists on the left. And so if you have somebody like Kash Patel, who is obviously speaking out initially in a way that he thought would best protect the right and vilify the left, then doesn't ultimately that kind of redound to Trump's benefit?
Yeah, Brian, on the one hand, you're exactly right. It seems like Trump and his flunkies, his lackeys, his sycophants are always willing to double down on the bad personnel they have decided to bring into the executive branch. However, on the other hand, we know that Donald Trump throws people under the bus early and often, particularly when it reflects poorly on him in some way. And, you know, there is mighty criticism being leveled against Kash Patel for this, you know, I wouldn't even call it a rookie move. I mean, it is just absolutely inappropriate for an FBI director to do something like that and make the entire DOJ, the entire FBI, the Trump administration look like flippin' fools. So that, coupled with the lawsuit, and it's important to keep in mind that in the court filing in which these three senior FBI agents and officials sued Kash Patel, Kash Patel is quoted as saying basically it was the White House that was, he called them they, but it was pretty clear that he was talking about, as the suit sets out, the DOJ leadership and the White House were insisting that these political firings take place. Anybody that had anything to do with investigating the crimes of Donald Trump, who was an FBI agent or official, had to be wrongfully terminated. That also reflects poorly on Donald Trump. So it may be that in combination, these things, you know, will lead Donald Trump to introducing Kash Patel to the undercarriage of a bus.
You know, something else that I thought was striking was this morning when it was discovered because I believe a friend of the family or a family member had actually turned in the alleged shooter. Kash Patel came out in the aftermath of bungling this thing for the last couple of days and basically gave himself and the FBI credit. Can I have your general reaction to that, to this idea that in the aftermath of fucking this thing up so royally, that he would then stand there with a straight face, give himself and his leadership of the agency credit for doing something that really wouldn't have happened without some completely separate entity deciding to do the right thing?
Yeah, I have two observations about that, Brian. First of all, it is entirely usual for somebody who's committed horrible crimes, somebody who's on the run to confide in a friend, in a family member, and that is how the information comes to the attention of law enforcement. The friend or the family member actually has some loyalty to the rule of law, and they turn the perpetrator in. That is, I will say I have seen those cases. They are a dime a dozen. So I wouldn't criticize the FBI for closing the case, making an arrest based on information like that. But as you point out, you bet I will criticize Kash Patel for patting himself on the back. No, you screwed up royally, sport, in the earliest moments of this investigation by wrongfully announcing you had the gunman, which, again, will give the actual gunman a robust defense at trial, one that could inspire reasonable doubt in some of the jurors. You don't pat yourself on the back for the happenstance of a family member doing the right thing and turning in, I believe, his son, because I think it was the gunman's father who finally, it may have used a member of the clergy as an intermediary, but finally turned his son in to the FBI. So, but of course, Donald Trump takes credit for things that he had no hand in actually doing. It looks like Kash Patel is, kind of cut from the same ugly cloth as Donald Trump.
Right. Well, look, I presume this is not the last we'll hear of this situation as it continues to unfold. So for those who are watching, if you'd like to follow along with this news and any other legal news, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on the screen. Great way to support us, completely free, and a great way to support independent media. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.